Far from the colonies, deep in the twisting tunnels of Mars, a mining drone suddenly went mad. Its arms jerked out of control and smashed into a support column. A low groan rolled through the tunnels. Cracks split the rock ceiling. Then, with a thunderous roar, a section of the shaft gave way. Stone and dust crashed down in one corner, while most of the crew stood farther back. Workers shouted and stumbled, their headlamps cutting frantic beams through the haze. One man, a young geologist named Yarrick, was caught. A massive rock pinned his leg. His team, coughing and covered in dust, rushed to him. They pushed, they heaved, and at last dragged him free. Yarrick was bruised and shaken, but alive. By the time crews cleared the rubble, fear had already taken hold in the colony. Then, mysteriously, video footage of the collapse appeared on Earth. Every news channel carried it. Screens flickered with the chaos underground. Anchors spoke with outrage, blaming Mars for reckless mismanagement. Subtle messages followed, implying Martian resources should be overseen by Earth. Questions were raised about the corporation that had sent the vessel. The company denied any role, but their representative added a cruel line: Mars cannot govern itself. The weight of the moment pressed on Voss. It was 2057. For 12 years he had led the colony, watching it grow from a handful of pioneers into a community of 2,000, most in his own Voss colony. Every life, every invention, every hard-won piece of freedom now rested on the choices he and the council would make next. Voss called the council together. The chamber was larger now. New settlers arrived every 2 years, and China and Russia had joined at the table. Lin and Karpov sat beside Voss, showing Mars was no longer led by one nation. The issue was urgent: an unauthorized ship. Years ago, Earth and Mars had signed a treaty. No vessel could come without approval. That promise was broken. Voss rose. Earth sees Mars as a mine. They want our labor, not our freedom. A young engineer spoke up. How do you know? Because their messages make it clear, Voss said. Polite words, but the meaning is the same. Control. The chamber filled with voices. Some argued resistance was hopeless. Earth held the power. Lin cut in. Distance protects us. It takes 2 years for another ship to come. Karpov added, we didn't survive on Earth's charity. We survived by building, by inventing. That is our strength. Still, the council was split. For the first time, unity cracked. Voss stood again. His words cut through the noise. We are not Earth's outpost. We are builders. That is our weapon. Silence. Then the vote. Lights blinked. Green, red, until the board froze. Mars stays united. Mars stays independent, Voss declared. Relief swept the room. Fear was still there, but for now it had been beaten back. The sabotage spread. More tunnels froze, threatening lives. Panic grew. Scientists traced the attack to orbit. The intruder ship was hijacking machines through coded signals. Mars struck back. They built software shields, scrambled signals, and hardened their networks. The mines came back online, stronger than before. Then came the boldest move: autonomous bots with experimental fusion cores. Dangerous but powerful. Cameras captured their eerie silence. Bots swarming through collapsing tunnels, sealing cracks, bracing walls. The footage was sent to Earth. The message was clear. Mars was no failing outpost. It was inventive, alive. The world was divided. Citizens admired Mars. Corporations and governments dismissed it as a trick, but scientists were stunned. Fusion power was something Earth had not mastered. Pressure mounted to seize Mars's research. The bold move had backfired. Above them all, the intruder ship waited, silent, watching. And then it struck again. In Washington, pressure kept building. Messages flew back and forth, revealing the truth. China already controlled 80% of Earth's rare minerals. On the moon, they had built a huge colony, pulling resources for fusion power and advanced robots. The United States could not fall behind. To keep up, they needed Mars, to dig, to refine, and to send precious metals back to Earth. The vessel struck again. This time, it attacked the sky. Weather satellites began to fail, sending false reports. They showed calm air while a massive dust storm raced toward a farming dome. The farmers acted too late. Shutters slammed just as the storm scraped the dome. Sensors went dark. Several rows of crops withered. The loss was not fatal, but it was a terrifying warning. If storms could be hidden, no dome, no outpost, no life was truly safe. Then came another blow from Earth. Washington announced the next supply launch would be cut. Less medicine, fewer tools. They called it a budget shortfall, but the settlers knew the truth. The message was clear: survive on less, or give in. Hours later, a message arrived from Beijing. Commander Lin read it aloud to Voss and Karpov, her face grim. A Chinese ship could deliver the supplies Mars needed, but the price was steep. Beijing demanded full access to the fusion research that had saved the mines and insisted on reshaping Mars' government. The council of many voices would be broken. In its place, a small executive body, Voss, Lin, Karpov, and Chinese envoys sent straight from Earth. It wasn't aid, it was a takeover. Voss studied his two allies. For years, the three of them had stood together, bound by the dream of a free Mars. Karpov's voice cut the silence, low and steady. They would turn us against each other, Voss. Use our people's fear to make us puppets. Lin nodded, her gaze locked on the screen. Yes, that is their game, the old world game. They think we have not learned better here. Voss walked to the window. Beyond the glass, red dust drifted across the horizon. 12 years of struggle pressed on him. Droughts, storms, failures, and hard-won triumphs. Every life in the colony rested on his choices. He turned back, his voice quiet but firm. They are wrong. Our strength is not in the nations we came from. It is here. It is what we built together. And so the Martians made their decision. Not retaliation, not war. They would answer with a gift. Voss gathered his scientists in a sealed chamber deep inside the colony. He didn't want another council debate. He wanted proof. Proof that Mars was more than survival. Proof that it could give something back to all of humanity. The order was simple. Film everything. Not just for records, for Earth. The cameras rolled. They showed microbes turning poisoned Martian soil into fertile ground. Rows of genetically edited crops pushed deep, strong roots. Plants thrived on regolith, the Martian soil. They showed autonomous bots sealing cracks in tunnels, their compact fusion cores humming in the dark. Satellites once crippled by sabotage were now restored and orbiting steadily. Then came the final piece, the most guarded secret. For 10 years, Martian scientists had experimented on rats brought with the first 100 settlers. Their genes were edited to carry dozens of extra copies of the TP53 gene. Humans have only 2, elephants with 40, are almost immune to cancer. The work was filled with failures, but at last they succeeded. The edited rats healed themselves, damaged cells repaired, mutated ones destroyed before they could spread. Their bones grew denser. After a year of testing confirmed the edited rats not only survived but thrived, the scientists made a difficult but necessary call. They urgently requested adult volunteers within the small colony, individuals suffering from severe bone density loss or early-stage radiation sickness. The treatment was risky, but the volunteers saw it as their duty to the future of the colony. Within 6 months, the volunteers' conditions began to reverse, proving the gene therapy was effective in human physiology. The same treatment soon saved the colony's most precious life. The first child born on Mars 7 years ago was a moment of celebration and fear. His fragile body could not withstand Mars's radiation and thin gravity. Every day was a fight. His small frame was weakened by the Martian environment. In desperation, scientists gave him the same experimental treatment. They knew it was their only hope, and it worked. His cells repaired themselves, destroying damaged ones before they could turn cancerous. His bones resisted microgravity, growing denser each month. His frame grew strong. By age 7, he had the resilience and strength of a 12-year-old. The montage ended with him laughing as he bit into a Mars-grown strawberry. It was not just a fruit. It was a symbol of a life made possible by courage and invention. A message followed. The TP-53 breakthrough would be shared freely, with Earth, with everyone, for the fight against cancer, for the survival of all humanity. The impact was immediate. Public opinion turned overnight. Anchors who once mocked Mars now praised it. The corporation behind the intruder ship was ripped apart in headlines. Its stock collapsed. Washington was accused of playing dangerous games with human lives. Mars had not only survived, it had claimed the moral high ground. Public pressure worked. The corporation recalled its ship. Washington promised to resume supplies, but the commanders on Mars knew the danger wasn't over. The great powers had learned one thing. The 3 commanders stood in their way. Beijing and Moscow sent new waves of settlers, hoping to replace Lin and Karpov. In the Western colony, some council members called for Voss to step aside. They wanted someone milder, ready to take orders from Washington. By law, a commander could only be replaced with a 3/4 council vote. For the first time, a date was set. The colony held its breath. Then, disaster struck. A meteorite smashed into a lava tube in the Russian sector, trapping miners deep underground. Without delay, Voss sent robotic drones into the tunnels. They cut through rock, mapped passages, and pulled the miners to safety. Lives were saved. In the eyes of Russian and Chinese settlers, Voss was no longer just a leader of the West. He was the man who saved their people. His reputation soared. Voss seized the moment. He unveiled Mars's first crewed flying craft, a machine built for the thin skies of the red planet. Then came something bolder, a plan to release engineered microbes across the plains. These were modeled after the ancient organisms that millions of years ago transformed Earth's toxic atmosphere into oxygen, paving the way for animals and eventually humans. This, Voss declared, is the first step. One day Mars itself will breathe, not for us, but for the generations that follow. The 3 colonies watched in awe. Lin and Karpov's positions grew stronger, and Voss's leadership looked unshakable. The message was clear. Mars was moving forward, and it would not bend. The council voted. Voss stayed in command with a clear majority. Settlers cheered. His victory also lifted Lin and Karpov, champions of a unified Martian identity. But Voss wasn't finished. Quietly, he leaked proof that Washington, Beijing, and Moscow had all tried to manipulate the colonies. When the broadcast hit Earth, the effect was explosive. Public outrage spread like wildfire. The three great powers had no choice. One after another, Washington, Beijing, and Moscow bowed before the pressure. They sent messages to Mars calling to end the standoff and write a new treaty. The commanders in the council gave a nod. 4 months later, Earth's delegates arrived on Mars. For the first time in history, leaders of the old world sat face to face with leaders of the new one. The summit would decide humanity's future. At that historic meeting, the breakthrough came. A treaty gave Mars sovereignty. Its colonies would govern themselves. Martian resources would no longer be Earth property. They became Mars currency, to be traded on fair terms with any nation. The deal also set new rules. Earth would share lab equipment and advanced tech. Mars would share major scientific breakthroughs. Earth could send tourists, but permanent settlers needed council approval. No military presence was allowed. No Earth power could ever replace a Martian commander. In the council chamber, Voss, Lin, and Karpov looked out over the colonies. For the first time, Mars was not just surviving, it was leading, but change was coming again. Voss's term, which began in 2045, would end in 2060. The question of who would lead Mars into the future now loomed. The prototype of fusion propulsion was shared with Earth's great powers. This breakthrough promised to slash interplanetary travel times. The journey between Earth and Mars would no longer take months, but mere weeks. Within a decade, ships could arrive every month instead of once every 2 years. The impact was inevitable. Populations would surge. Domes would give way to sprawling cities. Resources would be strained. And with growth would come new conflicts, social, political, and technological, that would test Mars's fragile unity. Mars had secured its independence. But as the first new wave of settlers prepared to launch, one question burned brighter than all others. Would Mars remain the dream of pioneers or become the battlefield of empires? Watch the upcoming episode where the first fleets with fusion drives arrive and Mars faces its greatest test yet.